Jeff, the symposium you were mentioning is building on the 100-day plan laid out by President Xi and Trump. It's providing more opportunities for cooperation between the world's two biggest economies. Let's bring in Dali Yang, live from Chicago. He's a professor of political science and senior advisor to the president and provost at the University of Chicago. Professor, welcome to our program. Can you talk to us about areas of cooperation between the two sides at this symposium, and then areas that the two sides may not necessarily see eye to eye?
Well, I think certainly the issues in agriculture, in manufacturing are some of the top issues whereby the two sides have come together in terms of stabilizing relations. Mar-a-Lago really evidently helped to stabilize the relationship. Now, beef is really interesting because if you think about it, it's really about the rural vote in the United States. And the Chinese realize it. In fact, I just came back from a trip to Iowa where we had a dialogue also related to U.S. China relations. And the Chinese participants recognize very well that there is tremendous support for exporting to China, soybeans, beef, and so on. And they also realize that this is where actually a lot of the votes for the Trump administration come from, and therefore they want to actually sort of play to that theme in terms of reaching out to the hinterland, so to speak, to the local communities, and in that sense also to help to stabilize U.S.-China relations. But at the same time, there are other issues. Finance is another area, and I'm sure the conference that's coming up will touch on. And in fact, China has also been very keen to speak to that issues, especially because the current administration has quite a few people coming from the financial industry as well. So there is truly a very significant dialogue in terms of bilateral economic relations, but the political overtones are also very obvious.
Professor, you mentioned the leaders, President Xi and President Trump's meeting at Mar-a-Lago. In your opinion, how much of a turning point was that meeting, and would the current negotiations be going on in New York or in Iowa if that meeting had not been a success?
Well, if that meeting had not been a success, of course, we are talking about quite a bit of a turmoil in terms of U.S.-China relations, and in many ways in terms of the global diplomacy. But of course, it set a wonderful tone, at least for the short and intermediate term, in continuing to talk. And of course, we are coming to the time to the for delivery in terms of the 100-day plan. And of course, as you know, there has already been some preliminary points reached, and people are looking to see actual deliveries in terms of beef exports and so on to China. But at the same time, the two sides can talk, look further into the future with the comprehensive dialogue in 4 major areas. And of course, the summit helped to lay the ground, and that will actually carry some momentum for the high-stakes relationship between the two countries. At the same time, I detect a significant interest in continuing certain dialogue that actually was started many, many years ago in terms of a bilateral investment treaty, in terms of helping to further stabilize economic relations, especially investment between the two countries as well. So I think actually at this point, the atmosphere for continuing this kind of discussions is quite good for the two countries, and including actually the spate of conferences that are being held in various parts of the country as well.
So you mentioned a positive atmosphere, and China, of course, has sent trade delegations to the U.S. Should United States be sending trade delegations to China?
Oh, yes, indeed. There are actually, from the Treasury to the Commerce departments and so on, those kind of conversations continue, and I expect them to continue. But of course, there are going to be some sticking point. The challenge, I think, is the recognition by the two sides that, of course, we are going to have some disagreements, but when it comes to trade and investments, it's usually a bargaining process, and there is some give and take. And the Chinese side recognize, in fact, so sort of this is a continuing process. There is also news that just came out that the Chinese trademark approvers just approved, in fact, reacted to appeal on certain trademarks related to the Trump brand. and they actually had relented and already approved those trademarks as well. So the Chinese side is actually quite open and quite actually forthcoming in terms of trying to deal with some of those issues.
All right, Professor Dali Yang, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much.